Hey, Will. I'm going to be talking about a few things concerning the website. Um, Doing as much research as I can. Um, and I have my son with me today, so if you hear any noises or anything, we'll just roll with it. You know, this is non scripted, but I do have some points to talk about. So these are just observations, and essentially at this point, we're doing the best that we can. Um, it's kind of like with Well, first, let me invite you to see these as positive pain points. These are kind of how I look at negative things, pain points. I like to see them as areas of opportunity. Um, so, try and see them that way. It's kind of like, um, we're going from a position of not knowing what's going on to being able to predict things and then control them. We're moving to a position of control. So it's just like with, AdWords and at least being able to track, some conversions. Um, Basically, getting in there and setting things up from scratch puts us in a position of control. We know what's going on. You know, instead of having an AdWords portfolio that's just stuffed with all kinds of keywords all over the place. It's basically we're going from sort of like a shotgun approach to more of an in-depth control type of deal is what we want to do. So I'm going to go over some of these bullet points, and I'll just go over these bullet points verbatim, kind of explain them, and then kind of go over the bottom line at the end. Um, so over 75% of AdWords clicks come in by mobile. Um, so the majority of our traffic, 3/4 of our traffic is done on the phone, and our website is not mobile optimized. I wouldn't classify it as mobile optimized. Um, it's not very pretty from the mobile perspective. And the other thing to note is that across different devices, say iPhone 8 versus iPhone 10 versus Android whatever versus another Android whatever versus a Windows phone, all of which can have different, bugs or an entirely different view of the website, um, even down to the browser. They could be using a Chrome browser, Safari browser, Firefox browser on their mobile. Very, it's even less predictable than, you know, um, different browsers on the desktop. So it's very easy to say that what you're going to see in Chrome is what you're going to see in somebody else's Chrome on their desktop. It's what you're going to see on a Mac or what you're going to see on a Firefox on a Mac. It's rather predictable. Mobile is less so. Mobile is less predictable. It's not as consistent. So not only are we not mobile optimized, but mobile in and of itself has a lot more variation in it, I would say. So we're not in control of that whatsoever. Um, and again, these are just realistic things, as realistic as we can be with. Um, I'll get into our data is not. We'll get into that in a little bit, but again, these in a way can be seen as positive things. They're again areas of opportunity. About 70% of visitors are new users. So new users are basically, you've heard of cookies. When someone visits the website, they get a cookie, and that identifies them as a unique user. And I did the 70% over, it was 6 months, I think it was. Um, so, and I might have even done a year. I think it was just 6 months. But yeah, so uh, take these points as literal, okay? Don't give them a vague, don't think like about 70% of what comes to the website are like totally new customers or new or prospective customers. Don't take it too literal, because the data is just like, there's so much data. It will always be this way with Google Analytics. It's the leading analytics platform that exists on the planet. So there's just like so much data that it's muddled in and of itself, just innately muddled. Just because there is so much data. So that doesn't mean that 70% of the people that visit the website are necessarily prospective customers. It just means that they didn't have a cookie when they visited. So it's, if I had to guess, maybe 58 to 68% are prospective customers. That's what I would venture to guess. Um, but it's a literal thing. So it's 70% are new users, which is defined as a user that visits that does not have that cookie. They could have cleared their browser history. An application that they downloaded could have cleared their browser cache, or cleared. They could have cleared. Anything could have happened. It's both very. This type of stuff is both very literal and very unpredictable, just because there's so much data. There's a lot of crossing of wires and stuff. So we just do what we can with it, take it as we can, and currently we're just not in control. So we're just doing the best that we can. Moving on, the majority of dynamic clicks are looking for our brand. These are less expensive, people who go in and search Animal Den because they got a piece of our literature, or, they've been doing business with a competitor, and, they've heard about us by word of mouth, a drive-by, and then they look us up. The majority of dynamic clicks from our main master campaign that's been running are people who are looking for our brand. And those keywords, keywords with our name in them, those are less expensive and have a much higher conversion rate. And I'll move on to competitive targets in a second, but this is a good thing. They're less expensive keywords and they have a much higher conversion rate. But when you combine that in conjunction with some of the following bullet points I'm about to go over, we are missing opportunities to capitalize on that brand recognition. It's people who are familiar with our brand, so they're more likely to convert. And because it's our brand, uh, it's mostly just us marketing that brand or targeting that brand. But in a lot of areas on the website, we fail to capitalize on that, and I'll go over that in a little bit. So again, that's a positive, what I'd call a positive pain point, because it's working. It's you can see it. It's set up in our favor. We're just not capitalizing on it yet, but we will. And that brings to mind competitive targets. I kind of like this idea of starting a campaign where we target other brands, Pet Palace and Barkefellers and Zionsville Kennel. Um, these keywords are typically less expensive because there's less competition marketing for those spots, bidding on those auctions. And they have a much higher conversion rate because those people searching those brands and those keywords have what's called high buyer intent. So they basically have their wallet out on the desk ready to purchase. So, I kind of want to open up a new campaign targeting those brands, they're typically less expensive keywords, and they're going to have a higher conversion rate than the other stuff. The other campaigns are going to be expensive compared to what we're dealing with. We're just going to have to. Everything's played by ear, but we just it's kind of just moving forward. You understand. So moving on to the next bullet point, about 51% of sessions drop off immediately. So a drop off is basically, and some of these definitions of these terms they're hard to understand because they try and track everything, and it's just kind of gets lost in the details, even in Google. But 51% of a drop off is basically, a drop off can be one second. So let me push on because I'm going to start pushing time if I don't keep moving. So basically a drop off can be like they either leave the website entirely, they go forward to check out another page from the landing page, and then they press the back button. So it's basically the data's there, but it's kind of unclear because once you get into user exit rates, things sort of start to cross wires. So it just is what it is. Bounce rate, drop offs, and exit rate, they kind of, you're dealing with thousands and thousands and thousands of users over 6 months or sessions, so it kind of gets mixed up, but these are the numbers. 51% of sessions drop off immediately. So basically I would equate it personally to they just leave. They leave the website. And, they could go to the very bottom and click different links or do different things, but the fact of the matter is they're not converting. Okay? So, moving on, about 31% of sessions drop off in the first, second, or third interaction. So 51% drop off, quote unquote drop off, just equate that to not converting. They're not moving to step 1 of booking. They drop off immediately without engaging with the website. 31% of sessions, and a session is, one user can have multiple sessions. So this isn't like 51% of users, but I mean, it would be kind of near that because it's kind of hard to explain. 31% of sessions drop off in the first, second, or third interaction. Just again, equate that to sessions that are not resulting in conversions. Which, remember, a solid conversion rate, we're moving upwards of 5%. So it's expected that these numbers might be high, but still, so maybe it's not as negative as it sounds. That's a fine way to take this information. And I know it's a little hyper complicated. That's how these people are at Google and everything, but still, I still want to illustrate and emphasize the point that we're not in control. And I'll wrap that up in a little bit. About 18% of users just exit. They just leave. So that's 18% of users, which is, a user can have multiple sessions. There's page views, sessions, there's all kinds of data. But basically, users is that hot button, that's 18% of people. They just exit. And again, equate that to non-conversions. And basically, just don't engage at all. They just exit. More people go from homepage step 2, or more people go from the homepage to step 2 than people who go from the homepage to step 1. I think you can see that in was it content drill down. Might have been behavior flow. Yeah, here you can see it's looking like, you know, these. Here's the starting pages. A lot of people starting on this page, and they move over to booking step 2. So we're talking about 2.4 thousand sessions, 259 sessions click through to step 2, whereas only 160 click through to step 1. So basically that's where I drew a bottom line, and I just said, you know, and I was working on both these sections at the same time, you know, after I got, so at this point I was just kind of like, our data is just unreliable. You know, we've been talking about that bounce rate forever, and it's just way too alarming to be ignored. And that's what every professional in the world, like even people where, you know, that aren't web consultants, that this is just specifically what they do, they would tell you, you know, whether it's specifically AdWords and they're familiar with analytics, or specifically SEO and analytics, or specifically web design or development, and they're familiar with analytics, you know, and they work with it on a day-to-day. Every single one's going to tell you that bounce rate, you know, it's just not right. And the more I get into some of this data, just the less and less confident that I feel. You know, we know how to work with these numbers. We know how to look at these things, and you know, for instance, we know what to do with this stuff. It's just the more that I look at these numbers, the more that, I wouldn't say the less confident I feel. I don't want you to think of it that way. Specifically, how I feel and what I think in my mind is that I feel like we have holes in our website where where the tracking code has been littered, and I feel as though our Google Analytics does not have a good grip on what's going on with our website, because the design of the website, the code in the website, something is tripping wires. That's how I feel. So, you know, and obviously I wouldn't feel in control because I didn't design the website. But at the same time, I'm just talking specifically about how the numbers make me feel. The more I look into things, the dicier I feel like our situation is. Which again, positive pain point. You know, once we make changes, we're going to be in control. Basically what I'm saying is that we don't have control of our sales funnel. You know, we're basically just, sometimes I feel a little bit scrambled with what's going on, but you know, that's the case, and it's positive that we're making the changes. So diagnosis, very sloppy, zero control, data unreliable. You know, I see a lot of the data and it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel like it was set up correctly. It doesn't feel like we had any kind of control when we were setting things up. You know, for instance, you take a single web page, or let me just go over the bullet points. Step 4, URL reached without conversions. So I found that to be true as well. That could be from us, you know, messing around and getting there, but you know, the point is like, if I had designed it, I would make, okay, so step 4, when someone hits that step 4 URL, that's what fires our conversion. Okay, that's what gives us another tick in the conversion numbers. If I had designed it, I would make it so that you can't get to that page unless you truly did convert. Right? So that's what I'm talking about, having a lack of control. And I feel like there's a lot of that going on. For instance, this is a good bullet point to illustrate that, and I'll wrap up here in a second. Encouraged links. So our second biggest landing page. So this is our home page. Starting pages. homepage. Our second largest starting page is in our neighborhood. So that's this page right here. Start at home, and I'm sure a lot of people. I mean, let's look at it here. These things are called leaks. So basically, what this data here is showing is that 221 sessions, which that could totally be 221 different people over this 3-month period. It totally could, and probably is. So we have our second largest landing page, which is huge. This is where we begin our sales pitch. We begin explaining things. It goes LP, landing page, to squeeze page, and the squeeze page does the conversion, and it's hard to describe all in one video, but basically what we're showing here is that our second largest landing page, where people land to first begin their engagement with our brand, is this page, and it has tons of leaks that go to different websites. They're not talking about the animal den specifically. We have this block here on every page, but that I just don't feel confident about the way that looks. I would rather have a button. I would rather have a big book now button as opposed to, here, make a reservation on this random web page, check in, check out dogs, cats. I just don't feel confident in it. It's not, the hand holding isn't there. It's kind of like positioning. If you're going to sell a car, you don't ask for a sale in the first 10 minutes. You kind of do the dance. There's no dancing done here. It's just kind of, again, shotgun approach. But what I'm talking about, lack of control concerning leaks, is that, our second largest landing page is just talking about all kinds of different companies, and, these are angles that make sense. They're just not angles that produce black and white results. Okay, so poor funnel organization. Basically, everything's been designed sort of like, again, like I guess that explains it. Everything's been designed, from angles that would sound or seem like they'd make sense, but maybe from more of a capitalist perspective, they don't make black and white sense, or they're not black and white effective, if you will. So things haven't been designed, you think about it from a flowchart perspective, things are more of a shotgun approach than really having, like a flowchart perspective, a really well thought out, planned out, strategic deal, and more of a, is it aesthetically pleasing? Are we showing that, we've got connections? Are we, it's kind of focused on the wrong areas. And I had a question about our contact form. Are we getting those? Are we getting these contacts? Are they being forwarded to an email? Where are we at with this? So I guess we've got to do this, looking into the current website and trying to utilize the data that we have as much as we can, but it's just goes to show that the bottom line is that there is a large lack of control, and a lack of control compromises black and white results. So that's that. There's probably going to be a lot more analysis and stuff. This is, the more I come upon it, the more that this is a this is a big heavy hitter thing. I mean, when we make changes, we're going to have lots of changes. We might even see widespread panic. Who knows? You know what I mean? Because we've been doing things the same way for 21 years. Or, this website, maybe 4 years, or with AdWords is about 4 years. We've been doing things the same way and getting the same results. And the more and more that we kind of do the opposite, the less that we turn a blind eye, the more that we see what I would prefer to call, again, is positive pain points. So, we're going to be making changes that affect black and white results in an extreme way. And we're turning away from the blind eye approach. And we are going to a position of control. So that's where we're at with things. So my focus right now, starting now, I'm very busy. Between the website, which we want it to be state of the art. This isn't something we can just wrap up and put a bow on it in a month. In one regard, it could be that way. In another regard, we want to do things right because this is important. So I'm very busy because I'm doing the website, I'm doing the SEO, and I'm doing the AdWords all at once. So that's the position that we're moving with things over the next 4 to 6 months. These are big, heavy hitter things, and we're going through a major transition right now, so I guess it fits because then, third and fourth quarter, we can get into the digital transition in-house, tablets and software and all that good stuff. But, I just want to illustrate that we're moving from a blind eye approach to a position of control. And I want to point out, how important it is for us to buckle down and actually look for black and white results as opposed to, just putting something together and putting a bow on it and then looking at it from a surface level view and saying, yeah, that looks good, or yeah, okay, cool. So it's not immediate, but we'll get there. All right, I'm going to wrap it up because I know I'm over time. I'll talk to you soon, man. Take care.